Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.
Meanwhile, in Georgia, people continue to hit the streets against what they called rigged elections and demand the new elections administered by the International Committee to ensure that the new elections are held free and fair. Some analysts have also raised concerns over statistical data pointing to clear manipulations that need to be studied closely. One of them is Hans Gutbord, who sat down with the checkpoints this week for a more close-up look at 2024 parliamentary elections.
Our estimate is that at least 40 million lari, more likely quite a bit more than that, was flowing through the country. People took that cash out of certain accounts, and that typically leaves a trace. So it continues. There's several more suggestions that we make in this regard. Those include things like really understanding where the election headquarters were, who was operating them, and people talking freely about it. Again, if there's nothing to hide, if the government really wants transparency, if they want to convince the Georgian electorate and Georgian citizens that these elections were fair, they should be able to open essentially up everything that they have, including the correspondence on the ballots, the very thin ballots, where we still don't know how it is possible that the chairman of the Central Election Commission on September 27 says, oh, it's just a test version of a paper. And then a month later, we have hundreds of thousands of citizens whose vote in the end is actually visible to the people around them.
Yes, all of this needs GD's political will, right? To open these evidences for us. But you know what OCOD wrote, that there was practically no limits between the government and the ruling party, yes, which is not a good practice. Does this mean that the manipulations that we see were totally systemic, and what that means for the final outcome of the results, whether it will be said about Georgia that the elections were free and fair or not?
Well, what we certainly see is that when we look back and when we look back at the changes of the rules for how commission members were selected for roles in the precinct, and that change was in August. So we see, in the end, we see intent. We see people who are working towards a certain goal and to make it possible that they have the resources and the power to determine the outcome on the particular day. Now, understand that right now, yes, there's a question of larger political will, but there's also something else. There were lots of people working within the system, and maybe they thought that they were part of maybe just making a little tiny thing, and they didn't realize that what they contributed to is something really dangerous for Georgia. Because what it tells people is that there's almost no point in doing normal electoral politics. There's no point in being a volunteer in a political party if in the end it's always money and intimidation and some tricks deciding. And so I think it's important also that maybe as a party the GD will not really respond. But what I do hope is that many people who somehow didn't understand what they were part of, and that know something about the inside, and that can share some of these informations, that they see themselves first as citizens of this country, and also people that actually want a better future for their children, and they want their children to stay in this country, and that they will share the information with journalists and other people who can really help us understand what in the end went on. So yes, we have a problem, but in the end, I hope that there are people with good conscience that will do the right thing.
What do you think could change GD's behavior? Because at this point, we see that they do not listen to almost anybody who is criticizing the results and who is trying to see what happened during that day, pre-election period also, but especially during that day. And we see how courts react to all the evidences that NGOs create and bring and gather.
I think it's hard to say what will change the behavior of the Georgian Dream and ultimately a relatively small group in the Georgian Dream who take all the decisions. That's hard to say. But when you're in a really difficult situation and you don't exactly know what the right path is in the future, then I think that there's one place to start, which is that you tell the truth. You say what actually happened. And you insist on the truth of what actually happened. And I think, for anyone who's concerned about the future of Georgia, and this is also the situation in some other countries, these are difficult times. And therefore, to understand that there isn't necessarily success in a week or a month, or maybe not even in a year, but in that uncertainty, it really remains important to say clearly what happened and to stand for the right things and to say that in the end, as societies, we need rules, we need a rule of law so that we can actually work and we can build future for our children. That's important. And I think that's an important thing, almost like a compass in difficult times, that sometimes you don't know whether this path will bring success or that path or when it will come, but still doing the right thing is even more important. Also as a model for other people around you and your children. These are very, very, I think one really needs to be clear, this is a really very profound crisis. It's possible that the government succeeds with this attempt to just take the result, but still, I think it's important that people stand up to that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gutbord. Hans.
The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.